Alright, part 2 of our reassembly. We finished the slide in the first half, and that's done, put back together. We're going to do the second half now. The bottom is more fun because there's a lot of finagling going on with little tiny springs and detents and trying to wiggle things to get them to fit. And the first time around it can be a little frustrating, and it helps if you have the right tools. I'm not using all of the right tools right now because I don't feel like digging up a pair of needle nose pliers to do this, and my fingers are small enough. So first step now is we got this little tiny detent and spring here that go underneath the trigger bar, and there's a little tiny hole which is very difficult to see. There it is. And that hole right there is where this sits in with the detent on top. Now if you have really small fingers like me, you could do this without any extra tools, but if you don't, then it will be nice to use a pair of pliers to make your life easier. I already got that in. Now we got to put in the trigger bar. That's this thing right here, and it has a little detent right there in the front. That little tit corresponds with a groove in the trigger, and we're just going to pull the trigger a little tiny bit so that that can catch that groove. And then when we do that, we flip the gun around and make sure that the trigger bar is sitting on top of that detent. We're going to compress that down like so. And when we do that, the reason for it is you want to keep that pressed because it's going to make the hammer axle area clear. If we don't, it catches in the way like so. So press that down, and those detents are round so they can slip off of the trigger bar. Some people like to wedge this in place, and it doesn't seem to make a difference for me. So next piece that goes in is our hammer strut, and that's this piece here, and that's going to straddle the hammer like that. So this gets dropped right in, and I do is I stick my finger inside the magwell, and I kind of use my finger to position it in the position that I want so that I can get my hammer to straddle it. And once your hammer is straddling it like so, then we can get our hammer axle in place. And this is a little tricky to do, but it's not impossible. Here's our hammer axle. The flanged part goes on the right side of the pistol, and there's a cutout right here that corresponds with it, so it's not that difficult. This just kind of slides right on like that. When the hammer lines up with it, it pops right in a very convenient fashion, like so. So now that the hammer strut is in completely and flush, I don't have to no longer hold this down because the button's going to keep tension on that. And I have my hammer strut underneath my hammer. And the way we go about this is we take our strut and we wiggle it from the magwell until you see that the strut is corresponding with the little pin going to the hammer right inside there. Can't see in this lighting, but you'll be able to see it. Once you do that, you can gently flip the pistol over so we can see the bottom of the strut inside there. It's that little shiny thing. We're going to slip the hammer spring over the strut like so. Now we could take the breech block, or not the breech block, I'm sorry. This is the bottom of the mainspring housing for that hammer strut, and slide that in place. And the spring will go right in that groove. Once you get in that groove and you compress it, you take the main pin that holds that and punch it on through. And it has some raised edges on either side. It slides right in. Once you depress it, you can take off the tension, and that part's done. So now our hammer's back in, and it's hooked up to our trigger bar. Cool. Now I gotta do our sear to catch the hammer. Sear is pretty simple. It's this little piece right here, and if you look at the cutout, it makes kind of like the shape of a woman's breast. Well, that's what I see. You know where my mind is. And it has a little hole here, and that hole corresponds with the pin, and then this little tiny pin here corresponds with all the other parts. They kind of sit in the stack. So it goes in like this, and it's going to just tuck in behind the sear. And it's very simple. Between the hammer and the sear, if you look inside there, you'll see these two little leaves. You can't see them in this lighting, I'm sorry, but they're in there somewhere. You can just barely see them there. And this is just going to tuck in between those like this. And once you snap it in there, you're going to take a little punch from the back side and recenter the sear through the hole that's supposed to be in. When we do that, the rest of these pieces start to come into place. Now, they go in sections, they go in little steps, and there's a certain way to do this. We're going to take our main pin, which is this one right here, and we're going to push our punch out and get this back in. But right before we do that, I'm going to take this piece here, which is one of the disconnects of the pistol. I'm going to slide that in place like so. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. I'm getting ahead of myself. This piece right here. This funky guy right here is going to go in next. And it's going to go in very much the same manner. This little hooked part is going to go around the hammer axle. And if you look, it's got some holes here. These holes are going to line up just like that in relationship. So, I mean, it's not too crazy. Just drop that piece in loose like that. And with that piece in loose now, we'll take our actual pin that goes through all that stuff and try and guide all these parts into alignment with each other. Now you can kind of dance this until it goes through. Now it's through, it's going to hold it in place, and I'll dance the sear with my roll pin here so that they all go through. So now I got those two pieces pinned in place. Awesome, halfway there. Alright, we're going to take the punch now and push the pin back through, and it's going to go flush with the other side of the roll pin. And you're going to ask yourself, well, why the hell did we even pop this in and align and everything like that? That's just how it goes. Alright, so now that's in there loose, and the sear is being held by the roll pin. This piece goes in next, and this little claw looking thing here has the main hole for the pin. And this is going to sit up against the hammer, so it's going to go in like this. This is the orientation of it, like that. And that little pin on the bottom part right there, you can see where my thumb is going to line up the next parts. So this one, we're going to kind of squeeze it in between these two here. And you'll know when you get it because it'll make a lovely click and it'll snap in place. Very, very simple. And almost got it. In fact, I had it, and I had to move the hammer and get everything out of alignment again because I'm bad with things like that. So I'm going to take my punch again, walk through this hole, try and line up these parts again. There we go. And once they're lined up, you can push the pin back through them, try and get everything lined up. Once it lines up, the pin will go through them. I'm going to cock the hammer to take some tension off of it. The sear is going to hold all that now. And once I get this pin lined up here, they'll relatively start to go through, more or less. The only reason it's binding right now is because of the tension of the hammer. So we're almost completely back together. You got a couple more little pieces that need to go in. Got this piece right here. This disconnect is going to sit right in there like that, and it's going to straddle the hammer assembly. So it goes in like this. This groove has to go through the pin though. So we're going to push the pin flush with that other piece there, so this can drop right in. This part right here is going to correspond with the pin. It's going to sit over where the hammer axle was, like so, and then we'll push our pin back through. Now we can push it through flush to the other side. It may take a little finagling. I work the hammer like so, and that gives me enough slack so I could get the pin across. So now we have it flush with this side of the pistol, the pin. And with the pin flush on this side of the pistol, you can drop in the rest of our parts and wrap this up. You got your flag, the safety. It sits in the pistol like this. It's going to sit down inside there underneath the safety. And there's a spring for it. Here's the flag, here's the spring, like so. And it's going to sit in there like that. And you don't even see it anymore. You can see it through the pinhole, making an obstruction. So we have to depress that to get the hammer, or the safety rather, straight through.